What's up, sassy gamers? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 48 of Got Our Attention Podcast. I'm your host, Mike, and I'm here with Bruno, Brian, and Kelly. And we have a fantastic show for you today. And I like the word fantastic, so I use that instead of saying great or good, because fantastic is just great.
Amazing.
It's fantastic.
Awesome.
Amazing. Ooh, I could use that next
Everything
time.
is awesome.
You've used all the words you said
Everything
you
is
didn't want to
cool when
use.
I know. This is terrible.
This is great.
What am I going to use next time? I don't know.
You're going to use nice.
Out of
Nice.
this world.
I have it's a very nice show for you today. That's good.
Banana.
So, interesting topics today. The first one that we're going to get into is actually something that I know a lot of people talk about, but not necessarily know the whole thing behind it. And it's kind of, most people like know surface level, but not even really that, right? And what I'm talking about specifically is NFTs and gaming. Because NFTs, which stands for non-fungible token, or by definition on Google, which says, this is per Google, a non-fungible token is a financial security consisting of digital data stored in a blockchain, a form of distributed ledger. The ownership of the NFT is recorded in the blockchain and can be transferred by the owner, allowing NFTs to be sold and traded. So there's two parts of that. There's the NFT, which is this digital, non-fungible token that's attached to the blockchain, and the other part is the actual blockchain. And again, I don't want to get too deep into the whole blockchain and the NFT part, but we did want to point out some different interesting things around the gaming space, because as like everything, it's starting to mix into the gaming world as well. So there are things called like NFT games, and we'll get into some of the other like studios and stuff that are actually doing things with NFTs. But like literally, you could go online. There's a website called like NFTgames.net, and it literally has a bunch of different websites or different games that allow you to be able to like basically mine cryptocurrency or mine NFTs, like gain NFTs by playing them. So like just like almost like think about Java games like you played back in the early 2000s or whatever on your browser. Very similar to that.
The good old days.
But you're able to basically mine for crypto and different NFTs inside these games. Now there's some other games that are past that too. Like
So they're making me work.
Basically, I mean, you're playing. I mean, think about it like this. Like
You're
I
not
play
playing,
a lot of.
you're working.
Well, I play a lot of games that, I chop down wood, right? Like that's my thing. Well, imagine if I could do the same thing, except I'm also gaining, real life currency alongside that. So it's kind of
like you
slippery slope.
would if you were a lumberjack.
If I
in
were
real
actually a
life.
lumberjack like Bruno.
Bruno.
Yeah.
But that's any MMORPG. You just
So
go and you
you-
play, and then you sell your in-game gold for
Right.
real life money.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, but you don't need the blockchain for that.
I
Right.
know.
Which is the part where the NFT part
It's
comes
less
in.
steps.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
you show me the game where you're having fun and you're working and making money at the same time.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying
Because
these
most
games are
of the gold
good.
miners in the MMOs, even them, and they're not on the blockchain, are not having fun.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not saying these are fun games, but I'm just saying that these are things that are out there. So, and it was a really quick search. I literally just said NFT games, and the first thing that pops up is NFTgames.net, and it's like a slew of just different games you could play to gain things. So, but we also see some of our larger studios kind of moving towards this blockchain movement or NFT movement with their own environments. And one specifically I want to talk about, which we've actually kind of covered in the past, which is Ubisoft.
Kinda.
Yeah, we kind of went into this, but so Ubisoft,
We went into it quite a bit.
yeah. So they're starting to invest into the blockchain and the NFTs. So what they've done is they've created their own marketplace called Ubisoft Quartz, and within Quartz, players able to obtain digits. So Quartz is their own decentralized market, which we'll kind of cover that in a second. But players are able to get their digits, which is basically another term for what they've called their NFTs. And those items are tied to, those game items are tied to the players who basically own it. So the idea would be that each player would be able to use the same item or the skin or whatever with across different Ubisoft games. Which is interesting because the only place it's valid is in their Quartz marketplace, right? And Quartz specifically isn't a blockchain, right? So there's a blockchain behind that's backing Quartz, which is the Tezos blockchain, which is funny because specifically, as we said before, like decentralized. That's the whole point of like NFTs and blockchain. Everything is decentralized so that there's no one place everything is stored. Well, what's funny is if it's in the Tezos blockchain, then it's not really decentralized, but more centralized within their specific blockchain. So outside of this blockchain, it doesn't mean that this digit is going to carry over to any other games or any other blockchain that you'd wish to sell it to, or person to sell something to, like Ethereum or something like that.
Well, I mean, even further than that, I don't think there's another Ubisoft game that you can actually use those devices in yet.
Right.
Because it's literally like armor, like it was a helmet, a pair of pants, and a jacket were what they started with, right? And that was only in one game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a new thing, right? Like they're growing and they're building and gonna be expanding this so much, right? So it's actually funny because they have a terms of service. Because the whole thing I think about is, just like any cryptocurrency, there's nothing backing it essentially, right? So it's a slippery slope, right? So they're literally in their terms of service, they have the consequences of game shutdown or termination of Ubisoft Quartz. It's like, what happens if Ubisoft decides that Quartz isn't a big deal anymore and they just want to get rid of it? Or what if it just somehow breaks and they just don't carry on with it? Or the game that you're playing it from doesn't carry on. In their terms of service specifically, they actually have, they're going to cover their ass. It says, like, if we decide to stop operating Ubisoft Quartz or the game, we will provide you with prior notice. Even if we do stop, you would continue owning your digits. So you can still own your digits even if the game doesn't work anymore or Quartz isn't around. Because it's stored on the Tezos blockchain. Right. It's still on the Tezos blockchain, so you're fine.
Completely useless.
Which is a decentralized and completely independent from our structure. So again, not necessarily decentralized. But so they say, basically this digit lives on forever and that you'll be able to keep it forever as long as the Tezos blockchain is around.
And until the sun expands and engulfs the earth.
Yeah.
Well, and do nothing with it.
Yeah.
Right.
It just sits there.
You can look at it.
Energy. Yeah.
Can you though? You can look at the token.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
you can't physically touch it, but it's there.
What are you talking
fun,
about?
right?
No,
I print out NFTs all the time.
You can look at the token, sure.
They're called JPEGs.
Do you know how many Bored Apes I've redistributed?
Yeah. They're all over.
Jamesy Sucks has a Bored Ape, an expensive one, might I add. I gave him one like the $800,000 ones, and I even went so far as to give him rights to it. I used MS Paint to put property of Jamesy Sucks on it, so that it's his and nobody else can take it from him.
Well, actually, that means you've actually created a new NFT.
I
did.
I
created a new
text?
NFT. Honestly, I think I kind of outdid myself with that one.
You really did.
I've been
man.
giving them out
God.
like crazy. I think I'm giving out like 20 something Bored Ape NFTs.
Wow.
Raise
How
your
have you
hand
had
if
all
you've
those?
gotten an NFT. Anybody on this podcast?
None of you guys
NFT?
requested it. You don't think NFTs are cool.
Yeah, I haven't received any
I mean,
NFTs from Bruno. So
you're just
we'll have to
giving
fix
it
what
it.
I'm saying is if Ghost Recon Breakpoint, the only game that has these in it, shuts down, all you'll be able to see is the token. And the token is not even the JPEG. The token is just a URL.
I'm sure somewhere in that terms of service it says you still have the memories.
I'm sure, yeah.
Because that's all you'll have.
So you won't even have a JPEG.
Literally.
You certainly won't have a three-dimensional object that you can spin around and look at.
You got to take a lot of
like you can in
screenshots
game.
beforehand.
Yeah,
I
let's make
think
sure you do that.
it's ridiculous that a lot of these game companies are implementing it that way. And so far, every implementation I've seen has failed spectacularly.
Well,
yeah.
It's interesting you say that because the next thing I had was where do companies stand on this, right? Other gaming companies, because we talked about Ubisoft, but we're about all these other companies that are out there looking at interesting things like this, right? So recently, we actually had an announcement that Square Enix has recently decided to let go of their main franchises they had, which is Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief, and Legacy of
Deus
Kain.
Ex.
Deus Ex, sorry. Legacy of Kain.
No. Let him stay with
I
Deus Ex.
like Deus Ex. I was going to
Deus Ex.
go with
It's
it.
fun. But they sold it to a
That's
company
one of
called the
those
Embracer
dirty
Group.
Games.
And the Embracer Group is actually really interesting because there's a whole story behind it. But the point is, Square Enix was like okay with letting go of their bread and butter, like the things that they're most known for, really, like actual like campaign games, I guess you could say. But the reason that they decided to do this was the first part was to cut down. This is literally a quote: to cut down and quote amid a challenging global business environment, which they're talking about the whole, like COVID happened, and then now there's supply chains, and there's just all these different things going on in the world that they just need to cut back on. Sure. But the second part of it was they're also wanting to invest in new technologies like blockchain. What? So they, that's what Square Enix thinks. They think the future is the blockchain. So they've let go of their prized possessions to invest in the blockchain. So great on Embracer Group.
To make that make more sense, that's what these panicked chief executive officers think when being confronted by the board of directors, who all they've heard is like these millions and billions of dollars in the blockchain, and are ignoring how a lot of it's crashed recently. But I mean, that stuff's going to go up and down. A lot of it's going to go back up. I'm firm believer. A lot of the cryptocurrency stuff can go back up as well.
Yeah,
there is use for, at least for that,
right?
But I mean, all these boards of directors have been just pounding the chief executive officers of all these major companies going, when are you going to make an announcement in the blockchain? What are you going to do about the blockchain? When are you going to make us some money that way? Because and it's the same thing that they've done in the past with other technologies like this. This is not anything new. It's just this time it's the blockchain.
Right. So
interestingly enough, I do want to point out, because one of the things you said is technically inaccurate. Tomb Raider and the rest of those
Deus Ex.
Deus Ex. Those projects that are not really making them money like they used to. Their bread and butter they kept, which is Final Fantasy.
True. Very true.
Final Fantasy, Marvel Avengers are currently their two biggest makers of money.
Okay.
Yeah, those game series haven't done anything in a long time.
No, they have. That's the thing. Those, like Tomb Raider, the most recent 3 Tomb Raiders have made 40% of all the revenue of all Tomb Raider has made ever.
Yeah.
They were good.
Because they were good and they sold well. They didn't meet the expectations of what they thought was going to sell. And that's been a problem with Square Enix recently, is that they have been overestimating what it's going to sell. And because of that, they deem it as a failure, even though it does make them a decent amount of money.
The reason I mentioned do a decent return in that way is that the way that y'all have framed it would make you think that maybe Square Enix as a company understands that the loss of that is a negative in some way. But I don't believe Square Enix thinks that at all, because from Square Enix perspective, the only thing for them that is making them money that is worth investing into is the Final Fantasy projects, such as Final Fantasy 14, and auxiliary products like Marvel's Avengers, where they have crossovers with Disney and stuff that pay them out a ton of extra money just to exist. So
that's exactly it.
Marvel's Avengers was an abysmal failure compared to Tomb Raider. But it's what, again, like what you said is 100% true.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have let it go if they thought it was not worth letting go.
It's basically, to them, an upgrade, right? You take chances, you take risk, and you're like, I'm going to put these cards out there because I'm going to get hopefully these other cards back. And that's kind of what they did with it. So yeah, I agree. They obviously have Final Fantasy 14 online, which is definitely doing really well.
I've got it on my bingo card. Collapse of Final Fantasy 14 due to NFTs. And I can't wait to fill that spot out because it's going to be a phenomenal collapse.
Bingo.
Yep. So, but see, this isn't the same sentiment that all studios have, because there's been a couple other ones that have actually voiced their opinions on NFTs, not necessarily for the positive. So there's a publisher, Team 17. Some of you guys may be familiar with them. They've done, I can't think of the different games they've interacted with recently, but I had it in my head and I can't think of it now. But basically they announced that they were going to partner with another. Yeah, Worms is one of them. They're most
known for the Worms series.
Yeah. Well, there's one recent. I think it's the boating fishing game I was playing recently.
That
Moon
narrows
Glow
it
Bay.
down to 15,000
Moon
Bassmasters.
Glow Bay. There you go. So they announced recently that they were going to partner with a group called the Reality Gaming Group to create an NFT art project called, again, Metaworms, because like you said, worms is one of their things. They're going to create a game called Metaworms, or a project. Now, some of the developers that they worked with, because this is a publishing company, some of the developers they worked with, there's a game studio called Agrocrab. So Agrocrab, and they got a little crabby about it. So they posted a tweet on Twitter, just like everyone else does. They take a picture that they've edited because the max limit of text you could put in a tweet. But it comes down and it says, "We at Agrocrab condemn Team 17's decision to produce and engage with NFTs. We believe NFTs cannot be environmentally friendly or useful, and really are just an overall fucking grift."
Grift.
So
Grift.
grift. Of course, I had to say it wrong.
Practiced
Please do not harass employees at Team 17 or the devs under the umbrella, as their decision seems to have taken everyone off guard and likely came from the very top. Needless to say,
Again,
we will not be working with them or on further titles, and encourage other independent developers to do the same unless the decision is reversed. I fucking hate it here, Nick and Caleb. So literally,
I fucking hate it here.
the opposite of what Ubisoft and Square Enix is going with. But there were some other ones too that necessarily aren't as negative or as vocal, I guess you could say. So there's also Ghost Town Games. They said, "Hey there, we at Ghost Town Games just wanted to reassure you that all of the Overcooked," that was the other one, and all of the any of the future games will never engage with NFTs. We do not support NFTs. We think they carry too great on the environmental and social cost. And we also want to ask folks to be kind when voicing their concerns to their friendly neighborhood community managers.
Yes, because it's not the community managers.
P.S.
Ghost Town
I
Games,
fucking hate it here.
makers of the Overcooked series.
Yeah. So the other thing that happened, and we covered this one before, but there's a company called GSC Game World, which is the creator behind the new Stalker game that was going to be releasing here soon. So initially they announced that they were going to be introducing NFTs into their game, and they thought it was really good and really exciting, and everybody's going to love it. Again, most likely a CEO or some C-level person was like, "We need to get into the NFTs and blockchain and throw these power words out there." And so they made the announcement, and immediately they were hit with just the amount of negative comments from us gamers, just overwhelmed them. And within I think it was a couple days, they came back out and posted another announcement and said, "Dear stalkers, we hear you. Based on the feedback we received, we made a decision to cancel anything NFT related in Stalker 2. The interest of our fans and players are the top priority of the team. We're making the game for you to enjoy. Whatever the cost is, if you care, we care too." Which is hilarious because that's such a salesperson thing. With love, GSC Game World team. So so whatever you're into, we're into too. Yeah, for sure. That's what you like.
I mean, come on.
So that is, the negative and the positive. But there's also companies that are kind of in the middle that haven't really said yes or no, like EA. Now, EA is funny because they have FIFA Online and all the Madden games and all these things that you would think they would want to dive right into NFTs. That would make total sense to them because they're already making so much money off of all the DLC and all the marketplace items and all this random loot crap.
But that's why they're not doing it.
But you would think they would just dip in that too.
Well, no, I wouldn't, because they've already figured out we don't have to go to all this developmental cost and all this other crap to just do what we're already doing.
Yeah.
To just sell
just
shit
give it time.
to whales and all I'm serious. I don't think they're going to get into it because they're smart enough to realize why do all this stuff? Because the whole this NFT, $800,000, blah, blah, blah. Well, that shit's not going to happen with the games. Yeah. Because all of that is based off of the fact of an artificial rarity to begin with. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to make an NFT of something that's in the game, you're making literally hundreds of thousands of them anyway, which for instance, Ubisoft's Quartz, the only difference was a serial number, which was printed really super tiny that you had to zoom into it to even read it.
Yeah. So funny enough, EA actually did voice their opinion on this, and from the article from I think there was the CEO that was talking about it. He said that NFTs were the future of the industry, but said they also weren't pursuing them at this time. So kind of like what you said, they don't really need to at this point, but they're definitely, it's up there. It's on the board. Like they just, whenever they need to pull the lever, they're going to do it. So it's just, that's what they've said. So that's kind of like what gaming companies kind of think about this subject in the NFT world, right? But I guess the question would be, why are companies wanting to invest into the NFTs and the blockchain? Like, why are they wanting to do this? And the biggest reason is the metaverse, right? So the thoughts of everyone being able to experience a home away from home, or this infinite marketplace, that this infinite land that you can purchase online, being able to get into that next on the ground level of the next thing, which is funny because again, this all runs on computers, so it's not necessarily infinite, but whatever. But some of these,
and if it is infinite, that doesn't allow you to jack up the price either. The whole point of being able to sell something at a high price is because it is finite, right. Which you're going to actually talk about a particular acronym coming up soon.
Yeah. So there's a thing. So there's some examples of the metaverse, and one of those comes back from a book from I think the 80s, right? I think I don't know exactly.
80s, year, not 80s.
It was an 80s.
From the 90s.
90s. Sorry, another decade away. It's called Snow Crash. So if you're familiar with that one, it's one of those. If you're not really familiar with that old book, there's a newer book called Ready Player One. They also made a movie after, which is another idea of the metaverse, right? You can put on these goggles and live this other life. And then more specifically, already the game that's already out it's called Fortnite, right? So Fortnite allows you to play a character from like all types of different IPs and even attend concerts and different experiences.
Or so Second Life. Second Life is another one that has been out around since the 2000 aughts.
Yep. So
which
there's
is the
obviously
metaverse itself.
Yeah, there's a lot of money to be made, right? So again, it's the new frontier. So the sentiment that it's similar to like with cryptocurrency first came out, like with Bitcoin, everyone's like, the people who invested are obviously millionaires, billionaires at this point. Now, the other ones are like, there's no way this is going to work. We're not going to do that. Obviously it worked and it's worth a lot of money now. But it's always this thing that we always say is it's FOMO, right? So it's the fear of missing out. And that's kind of what drives all of this, right? So the fear of missing out because, oh man, what if NFTs are going to be and blockchain is the next big thing? And we didn't get into it now when it was on the ground level. Now we missed out on millions and billions of dollars. 'Cause you're thinking, I'm talking about like companies like EA or whoever that can buy all this, fictitious land online and be able to put their advertisements and all these different things that allows them to bring in more revenue, right?
I mean, a great example of the land is Final Fantasy 14 online, which they tie your housing to like a land plot place, basically, and they'll only sell so much per server. And there's not enough for all the people on the server. So every time they release another set of block of land, it goes nuts with people buying it. And that's in-game currency only, not real currency. That's not NFTs. But I mean, it's a good example of a microcosm of that, of like, you can get people with the fear of missing out. You can get people with like this concept of owning a piece of property in a virtual world.
Yeah. But that also brings us to a good point, which is what are the risks of investing in NFTs or the blockchain? Because obviously there's risk. Like I said before, there's nothing, there's no risk. Okay. No risk. Sorry. Our resident NFT, he says there's no risk. No, but seriously, so recently we saw a cryptocurrency called Luna, which a lot of Twitch streamers and stuff were kind of backing, went from 119 like US dollars a coin to less than a penny within a month. Like, and most of it dropped off within days. Like this
very
can happen.
Specifically 0.0000196.
Yeah.
Cents.
And this can happen because the coin is only backed with what people feel it's valued at. So again, like it can literally go from 119. And if you had to, let's say you had invested into the Luna coin, like some of these streamers have, and put on, hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars of these coins,
tens of
thousands. And now
3.7 million was the biggest
3.7 million
loss that was publicized.
And now it's worth nothing, like less than nothing.
Literally nothing.
So that's one thing. There's another thing. There's a term called rug pulls.
At least with paper currency, like, because there's some paper currency that is like, because of hyperinflation, stuff like that, is worth literally nothing anymore. But at least with that, you can wipe your ass with it.
Well,
exactly.
In Canada, it wouldn't work that well because it's plastic, but you could sew it together to make like a money tarp to protect you from the rain when you're homeless.
There we go.
There you
See,
go.
it provides a use afterwards. Digital,
I wouldn't say that's a risk. I think that's a positive, right? So
that's a positive. Just don't get.
There's another
in it.
thing called rug pulls, and what this is basically someone who is basically trying to make a lot of money on this said crypto or said anything really. Like it's can even almost similar to like stock manipulation. They'll get with people who are influencers and are investing in the currency and get them to basically sell the crap out of it. And as soon as it pumps through the roof,
not just sell the crap out of it, they'll actually set up dummy accounts, and some of the rug pullers will sell the NFTs to their dummy account for very high prices. And they're able to, at that point, they're playing with fake money because they're selling it to themselves.
Yeah.
Like wink, wink, I paid for that. So, and they artificially inflate the prices.
Right. So it drives the price up. And once it's up, people start actually going, oh man, fear of missing out. I need to buy said coin or said whatever. And they start buying in and the price goes even higher. And then the person who started all this just basically sells all their shares or coins and just walks out a billionaire, millionaire, whatever. And now all these people that have bought in at these high prices, let's say 119 a coin, are now left with like nothing, like zero. Yeah. And again, FOMO has got them. And this, like I said, goes with the stock market. Like we saw this last year with the whole GME movement and all of the stonks, the game stonks and all that fun stuff with AMC. And
there was a story like a year and a half ago of this guy who owns like some car manufacturing corporation. And he said that he was going to allow people to buy his specially manufactured electric vehicles for Bitcoin. And then once the price rose, he sold all of his Bitcoin. And then the next day was like, by the way, you can't buy my Teslas, my cars with Bitcoin anymore. And so it plummeted like $13,000 or something per coin. So,
But he did the same thing with Dogecoin.
Yeah.
And that inflated for a short time.
Still holding bags on that one. So
I told you the second you messaged me while we were working, I was like, don't do it. And you're like, it just did. It's too late.
I'm doing it.
Like,
I'm in. Realistically, I didn't spend, I put $100 into it. Like I didn't spend a whole, I was like, literally, I'm going to throw $100 at the wall.
Wipe your ass with it.
And if something happens, great. If not, whatever. I don't have anything until I sell, right?
That's going to be the new litmus test on whether you should invest or not. Is like, okay, if you invest all this, if you lose everything, will you at least be able to wipe your ass at the end?
Somewhere out there, there's a guy who invested in cacti and he made a lot of money, and he's not liking this conversation if he hears it. He's like, what are you talking about? Yeah. I don't need to be able to wipe my ass with cacti to know that it was still a pretty good deal because I made a fair amount of money off of it.
And even if I lost all my money, I'm still not going to wipe my ass with that cacti.
Precisely. Or maybe he is. I don't know. I don't kink shame.
Maybe he's into that.
The other risk that I have listed here is a game that we talked about before, which is F1 Delta Time. And it was a crypto-powered racing game that launched in 2019, and they offered users the ability to buy NFT skinned cars. So you could literally have like this crazy car in this game because that's the only game you could play it in. And that was great. There was actually one that they'd spent over $100,000 on. This one guy had this one skin. It was like the most prettiest thing ever. Yeah. And but the problem is this company couldn't maintain the rights of the F1 series. So one thing to another, the next day they had to shut down the game because they couldn't use the license of F1 anymore. Leaving all of these users who had bought all these NFTs basically useless with no place to go because there's no other game to put these in. And even this guy who spent over $100,000 on this completely worthless NFT.
Which is really
go ahead.
Which is really ironic because in the real world, when you fuck something up like that, that is truly non-fungible, right? Like there are, dolls and stuff out there that there's one thing wrong. And the most recent one was the Wicked Bible, right? So there was this Bible, and this is like
it's a Bible from like around it's a Bible from approximately the 17 or 1600s that in it they missed one word.
They forgot to say, they missed one word. Thou shalt not commit adultery. So it said, thou shalt commit adultery.
Nice.
And so they rounded up all these books, which they thought all these books, and they burned them, right? So
wait, they burned Bibles?
Yes, because they weren't.
They were the Wicked Bibles.
Yes.
Oh,
so there are like 14 or something out there in the world, and they go for like crazy amounts of money. So when you fuck something up in an actual tangible, a non-fungible tangible token, it's actually worth something. But when you fuck something up in an F1 game and you no longer get the rights to it, it's gone, all gone, poof.
Yep.
And to add on to that, again, one of the biggest things that they are talking about, the proponents for NFTs and games specifically, I'm not talking about NFTs in general, just NFT and games. The big whole thing about it is like, it's decentralized. You'll be able to take this object to another game. So would you like to know what the developers of the F1 Delta game are creating next? Another racing game. Can you take your NFTs from the F1 game into that? No, of course not, because they lost the F1 license. So they give you the big double middle finger, say F you, and they don't give you any $100,000 back. They're just saying, oh, because you had an NFT there, we'll give you exclusive rights to buy NFTs in the new game at a discounted price or something goofy like that. It's like,
yeah.
So it's completely against what the whole concept was supposed to be about.
Right. So that brings me to my last point, which is something that was mentioned earlier by some of the game companies, which is what's the actual environmental cost for NFTs? Because obviously NFTs aren't a physical thing, right? So it's not like it's polluting the atmosphere or anything, right? So how is that a thing? Well, in order for NFTs to exist, they have to have a blockchain. Well, blockchains meaning that there has to be some place that has a server that has all these GPUs basically churning all these transactions, can constantly be able to verify the ledger and the transactions going on in the world. And this costs electricity. I mean, it literally is a problem, right? Because it's growing at an alarming rate. If you tried to buy a graphics card in the last couple of years, you've realized that it's impossible because of the fact that everyone that's mining has bought up all the cards and are using, like, there's pictures you can find online of just these massive warehouses like that are just filled, racks and racks and racks of all these GPUs just sitting on a rack and drawing power. And
even the special like anime hentai like weeaboo girls, like waifu girls on the graphics card special editions got bought up and are being put into like render farms.
Yeah.
Those poor little anime girls.
Yeah, there's actually stories of cities actually letting in crypto miners to help bring in new revenue, except it actually made the city worse because by the time that these miners got there and started pulling power, they started drawing so much power that it actually caused the city to spike on their electric bill because winter basically came along and everybody started using heaters to heat their house, which put them over the limit of the power consumption that the city was using. So they had to start borrowing power from other cities nearby. And because of that, it caused everyone's power bill to go up even higher than 4 times the cost that they're usually used to because all of this power consumption that they're using. So there's that part. And then the second part is the parts portion, right? If anybody's heard anything about trying to buy a car in the last few years, there's all these like chips, this chip shortage we have. Well, all of the computers, like I said, when you try to buy a graphics card in the last couple of years, you can't buy one. Like they're just not available. And AMD and Nvidia are two of the largest, graphics card makers, and they didn't expect this to happen either. So they've been trying to keep up with production and haven't been able to because of the shortage. Like they're literally trying to churn out what they can, and people are trying to buy cards and they can't. Like because as soon as they come available, obviously there's all these bots that are buying up all the cards, and then it's just literally impossible to get anything going. And It's pretty terrible. So there's and actually what's funny is in recent news, the along with the stock market, the cryptocurrency has also started diving, and to the point where it's not even worth some of these miners to mine because of the cost that it costs them to basically run the setup. And so because of that, we're starting to see some graphics cards become available because they're not trying to do this anymore. But at the same time, that's at right now. If the price goes back up, then we'll see what happens. So in all, NFTs and the blockchain are quite fascinating in its own sense, I guess you could say, because it's just an interesting thing to think about that, like, again, the future of what could be changing, what could happen in the future, whether it's the metaverse or whatever.
They're fascinating.
But we won't know what it is.
They're fascinated in the same way of standing in the tunnel and looking at that light at the other side of the tunnel. It's slowly getting larger, and you're going, okay, is that the exit of the tunnel, or is that a train barreling down on me about to run me over?
No. So what we do know is it isn't something that's going to change go away overnight. It's not going to change overnight. But we do know there's a continued changing. It's going to continuously change until something drastic happens, whether it's good or bad. And that's basically where it's going to, is it going to be the metaverse? Is it going to be the future? Only time will tell. And on that note, hang tight for just a few minutes. We're going to listen to a couple words from our sponsors. And we're back. So that was fun. That was a nice little, almost kind of like a light rant, but not really. I hope most people took something away from that.
You mean our viewing and listening audience?
Yeah, I hope, and me too, and y'all too, and everything. It was interesting to look up some stuff about this. And yeah, it's wild. But hey, let's actually get into something that or some games that we've been playing recently. I know Brian and Kelly have been playing stuff.
No, Kelly's been playing stuff.
But I've been playing the same thing.
Do we want to talk about the game that we've been playing first together?
I mean, it's 2 minutes because we didn't do very much. So we've got another game called We Were Here, which is a student game. It's very much a student game, but it was pretty polished for a student game. And it's very much in the line of Operation Tango, where you have two different viewpoints and you're trying to solve puzzles from two completely different viewpoints. We were able to solve 2 puzzles in it.
Yes.
We got stuck on the third.
We did. So Mike actually sent us an article about the group Total Mayhem Games, and they were just a college group in a college class together, and they were tasked with making a game in 14 weeks that would reach at least 1,000 downloads on Steam, and that's the game that we were playing.
We need to talk to them about stuff.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, it's also free, Mike.
Yeah.
Still, that's.
But it was so free. Popular and so
free,
catching and free. But they were able to create several other games. And so now the one that we are going to play next is We Were Here Forever. So
which is their 4th game.
Yeah.
In their first game as an actual studio.
Yes. And I have a mouse pad for that. It's in the room that I cannot enter right now.
Yeah, we saw them at PAX.
Artists.
At PAX East, they had a bunch of people playing because it's definitely a partner game. You need, I don't know if it's up to 4 or is it just 2? I can't remember.
I think it's.
I don't know. The one we played was 2. I think it's only 2. I'm pretty sure it is. We Were Here Forever was kind of a different spin on it, though, because not only were you both first person perspective, like the first We Were Here, but at least the levels that we saw were these like clockwork type levels that were connected with their own gravity kind of around. So you literally could look up and see the other person on the other level that you're trying to help them through, and you could see them walking around on it. So that was a cool twist that I haven't seen yet in the other ones yet. So we will find out more about it
Yeah. The other game that I played is called Mothered, and it is a first-person horror adventure game. Shocker, I played a horror.
I don't know if there's any
adventure
adventure in a horror game, but okay.
Oh, trust me, there is. But this one had a really interesting twist. So it looks like it takes place like almost virtually. So you wake up in the car and your dad is there and he's talking to you, but he's talking to you via text on a screen. Like, so you see him like writing stuff. And so you're not actually hearing anything. Same thing happens when you meet your mom and you can't ever see yourself. You've had some sort of surgery and you've lost all of this memory and they're just trying to rehabilitate you. It was, if you will check out the trailer for it, it'll make much more sense. But it is a very, very interesting game. And I got to the end and then realized I'm starting right back over. So I don't know if I've actually gotten to the end or not. So I definitely have not found all of the achievements yet, but I will definitely keep you updated. I played it. It was pretty quick. I think I played 2 hours of it. So for me to finish a game in 2 hours is, I mean, everybody else can probably finish it in 45 minutes, an hour. But it was a lot of fun. Very interesting concept.
Cool. I like how you said like it kind of starts over and I guess you don't even realize that you're,
Yeah.
if it is in fact actually starting over or if it's like still going and you just don't realize
Right.
it.
Yeah. So usually you
cool.
see the credits, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
but this one was, I was like, wait a second. And I was
So
like,
maybe it's
kept
not over.
playing. Maybe it's not over. And I kept playing. And then so I would do a couple of things that I hadn't done before. Like knock on my brother's door right off the bat. With not many differences. So I'll probably play it again, keep playing it, and then be really frustrated that was the end, and it's a big joke on me. But I have resisted the urge to look at YouTube videos and whatnot. So
Yeah, I'll have to look up the name of it, but I have a game that you need to play.
okay.
I haven't been playing a whole lot other than Valheim. Like I'm still kind of just trucking along in Valheim. Most of my friends I've played with have kind of stopped playing Valheim because they've hit their Valheim fix for the moment. But I'm trying to chug on because I know how I am. Like I'll definitely move on too. And I'm not saying that I haven't been looking at the store trying to pick another game because that's definitely happened. But I'm still kind of pushing along, trying to.
What
just keep
the
going.
hell is it that I hear that you finally just like, oh, hey guys, have you seen this really great game, Teardown? And
I
like,
never said that. That's not what I said. I said this is probably the next game I'll play.
That was, yeah, but I was like, oh my God, I told you about this like a year ago.
Right. And it's been on my wish list for a very long time. And I've been following it on Reddit for a long time. And I just feel like this is maybe the chance that I will probably buy it and install it.
And have your, I mean, really the fun of Teardown is going into like the sandbox mode and you can get the plane gun, which there's more than one plane gun, but you can get a gun that shoots out planes.
Oh,
yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff that I've seen online. So
you can shoot out little planes, or you can get a different gun that'll shoot out like Boeing 747s, and
it'll definitely melt your graphics card depending on.
It'll melt your graphics card. You like?
But yeah, I'm definitely interested. So,
Good
what about you,
source,
Bruno?
got it.
So I know that you have been playing something lately, and I know you want to talk about it.
So since the primary topic of this episode is game companies thinking of or actually releasing stupid things, it's only fitting that we're talking about Path of Exile.
Buckle up.
I should say, I'm going to preface this by saying I love Path of Exile. I've probably played somewhere in the ballpark of 4,000 to 5,000 hours of it. Between its original pre-Steam release and then another 1,000 some odd hours after its Steam release. And I usually play every other league or so. So, anyways, Path of Exile. I've played it on stream before for Game of the Moment. We've talked about it before. It's back with a new league, and boy, it was not a good release.
Oh.
I
This is the one you should have
died
skipped.
more on this league's story than I died in Elden Ring.
What?
Did you actually die in Elden Ring?
I actually went back and I checked the amount of deaths on some of my previous characters from previous leagues. I had less deaths on those characters throughout an entire league worth of playing of hundreds upon hundreds of hours than I did on just beating the story to get to the end game on my new character.
Did you flip a table?
No, that's not really my style. I more so just sat there in disbelief at how terribly designed the entire league was. So to get into it, this league changed a lot about the game. They finally advanced the story, which means that a lot of the characters have changed, which means the end game is now different. And all the old modifiers for the monsters have evolved. So modifiers on these monsters, if you don't know, essentially when you get to end game, a rare monster or an elite monster, which are special grades of monsters that are above normal, will have some amount of mods. It used to be like 1 or 2 for elites, and then like depending on how crazy the map was, if you were like super far end game, you could have like 10 modifiers. Well, they were like, we're gonna throw all those out and we're gonna create new modifiers, and the old modifiers were like, does fire damage, increased fire damage, has increased fire resistance, resists all elements, electrocutes. This is one of the new modifiers. It's just called Magma Barrier. They do not explain to you what Magma Barrier does, by the way. You can assume that Magma Barrier probably involves putting up a barrier made of magma. But it
I would think
actually
it just
does.
blocks magma.
Either one would be fine.
This is what Magma Barrier actually does. It does
God.
50% of physical damage is converted to fire damage for that monster. 25% of physical damage is done as extra fire damage. 30% increased fire damage, 40% increased fire resistance, 25% additional physical damage reduction, surrounds you by a magma barrier that takes 90% of damage from hits up to a fixed amount. So this is what the monster has as a buff so far, just from this one buff. When the magma barrier is depleted, it explodes, dealing massive fire damage. It's effectively almost a one-shot to most characters.
Massive.
The barrier returns 10 seconds after exploding. Periodically spawns fire volatiles that chase the player and explode for massive fire damage on a 9-second cooldown. When the league released, these mobs would have anywhere between 3 and 5 of these things. Not each individual sub-modifier, but a base modifier. So, for example, they could have Magma Barrier and Mana Siphoner. Mana Siphoner does 50% physical damage converted to lightning damage. This is the last one I'm going to list out because these things are massive. 25% of physical damage is extra lightning damage, 30% increased lightning damage, 40% lightning resist, immune to all lightning ailments, surrounded by a mana siphoning ring aura. Enemies in the aura take lightning damage over time and lose mana every second. Enemies standing inside the ring are not affected by the aura. So, if you get too close to it, you might live. If you are within the initial ring, it will literally suck the life out of you and murder you. And if you are outside of it, it will just bombard you and take absolutely no damage from you the entire time. And you could stack this with Magma Barrier, or Storm Herald, Assassin. So now you have a monstrosity that explodes every 9 seconds and teleports around like it's, I don't even know, the Flash maybe? Like the Flash.
This
But
sounds
you
like
the Flash, so let's not call it that.
I don't like this version of the Flash. This is like Ezra Miller's version of the Flash.
This-
No bueno.
this really
But,
sounds like there was a set of devs that just got sick of min-maxers telling them on the forums and Reddit and everything else about how their game is so broken and so easy to exploit, and it's not
Yeah.
even challenging anymore.
That's what it sounds
And these
like.
devs were like, fuck you.
No, see, that's where a lot of the controversy comes from, because prior to this, the director of Grinding Gear Games, the studio behind Path of Exile, was doing interviews with all the largest streamers that play Path of Exile, where he specifically explained that the goal for this league was to bring things in line so that build diversity is something that everybody will want to do, because all builds will be usable. And they're trying to get away from the idea of only some builds are truly effective because the game happens to be too difficult due to the modifiers that exist in the game. Instead, the initial patch blocked out like all but a few subset of builds that could actually survive against the ridiculousness that was this patch. It was so bad that within the first 11 hours, they released a hotfix to reduce how insane these mobs were. Then 26 hours after its release, they released another hotfix to once again nerf them. Then a third hotfix after like a day and a half where they were like, okay, we're actually just going to change it, and they can no longer spawn with like more than 3 of those modifiers ever. It's going to be 1 to 3, and we're not going to do more than that. And then everyone was like, you guys realize though that you based half of your, like 20% of your achievement system for the league behind fighting monsters that had more than 4 to like 7 of those modifiers. And they were like, right. Yeah, we did do that. We're going to have to fix that. And they were like, also you nerfed a bunch of the items in the game to fall in line with the new modifiers you're releasing, and they would gain additional strength from those modifiers existing, but by deleting the amount of modifiers, you've also intrinsically nerfed the best items in the game. And they were like,
my bad.
Yeah, no, we realized that. And then people were still like, also, low-key 3 modifiers is still too much. And they were like, yeah, no, that's true too. So they had to release another hotfix for a 4th one in total, where they had to release an entire patch that actually nerfed a lot of those overarching main modifiers to bring things back in line. And even now, it's still like a little hyper-tuned, but it's manageable now. I've never seen so much back and forth in a community, and I've also never seen the Path of Exile Reddit go up in flames so quickly. It was just like, people were like, you literally interviewed with people 4 days before this released, and you said, yo, we're not doing any of this, we're doing way better. And specifically, he was quoted on the stream saying something like, what was it? They were asking him, with these new modifiers being so hyper complex, don't you think that it's in your best interest, and also the studio should take and do the due diligence of like putting in what these modifiers do? And they said, no, we don't think people should just know what the modifiers do. You should have to figure it out, because that's part of the fun. Fast forward to day 2, and they were like, here's a list of everything that those modifiers do. We're sorry it's not in the game. Our bad. And everyone's like, my guy, everybody warned you this was going to be a bad time. And the league mechanic, to add insult to injury, that they've added is you have a sentinel that follows you, 3 of them. And the entire point of these is when you hit your F key that the sentinel is bound to, it buffs all of those monsters, making them way stronger. Which means if you hit that F key at the wrong time because you don't realize that one of those yellow mobs is somewhere off screen, and you hit it with the buff, it becomes immortal. Like, you cannot kill these things. They will have like 5 modifiers that are like quintupled in power, and you will just run into this thing and die. They also have these bugs where the traps...
What's the point of that, though? Like, so I guess to get better loot, because you can increase their difficulty?
That's another problem. The loot drops were totally skewed, and we're dropping almost no loot. So what ended up happening is people would just ignore all of the elites and yellows and only kill the basic mobs and the story bosses, because the story bosses were way easier to kill than any of the passive mobs you would run into. It was that bad. People would literally, you could watch these professional streamers skip through a whole map straight to the final boss, kill the final boss, and leave the entire map alive. Because they're like, why would I bother? There's no point.
Yeah.
It's miserable.
God,
oh my God.
And this brings me back, and I'll conclude it with this point, to something that I always say, which is, all games are shit.
No.
You're right.
No.
Exactly.
No, all games.
All games
if you say that, you'll never be disappointed.
Oh.
Yep. That is the Bruno mentality and motto.
I'll always be disappointed.
It's a glass half empty kind of approach.
So, I mean, that's been our that's been our show for today. We appreciate everyone listening and watching. If you are watching this on the YouTubes or listening to us on your favorite podcast website or app, we appreciate that. We do have a Patreon. If you're interested in supporting us a little bit more, we give you uncensored, uncut of our podcast, also some Discord perks and some other things like that. Constantly thinking about new items to make, so make sure to voice your opinion in our Discord. Tell us what you want to see. Also join our Discord. We also have a website, sasgaming.com, which we have a lot of different things on there as well, so make sure to check that out. That's basically it. That's what got our attention this week. And until next time, we love you guys and take care.
Bye.
See ya.